Recording. Brilliant. Okay.
All right.
Right. So, hello everybody. Welcome to the first Fiction Fix online of 2021. This event is being live streamed to my timeline, I believe, for those of you who aren't yet members of our Facebook group, and to the Finger on the Pulse, which is the Facebook group for readers on and listeners to Fiction Fix Online and Fiction Fix Live when we've managed to get one done again. And the Zoom video will be posted afterwards on YouTube on my Helen Claire Gould channel. So please do subscribe and please point all your friends towards it. So all at our Fiction Fix Live events, there's always a books table. We can't quite do that here, but authors, please post your book details in the chat and I'll put that up in a moment. And if you have a website, do include it and a link to the ebook or the seller for the print version. And the price of each edition would be useful. And maybe if you have an ISBN or ASIN, if you have it. And this can be done at the end or in the meeting. And I will post it with the video or in the comments below it. Is that okay? Right. Okay, so now Colin is going to deviate from the third instalment of his fantasy. Is it the third instalment or fourth?
It would be, yes.
Yeah,
yes, it would.
Of his fantasy series and share something different with you. It's a more seasonal tale. So please put your hands together for Colin A Brett with just 1 second.
All right then. We're about a week late for this.
Yes, never mind.
But never mind. It is Christmas Eve. This was the time of last-minute panic buying, desperation as ideas ran out, even scuffles over the last precious item destined for someone's precious. In a corporate boardroom, floor-to-ceiling windows showed a panoramic view of the city at night. High-backed leather chairs surrounded a long glass-topped conference table. A 50-inch flat-screen TV dominated the far end of the room, surmounted by a row of analog clocks showing the time in seven different cities worldwide. The representatives of the world's top 5 toy, game, and leisure companies were gathered around a small trolley, holding a range of coffee, teas, juice, and tasty nibbles. These were powerful individuals who controlled the hopes and dreams of every child on the planet. They did not like to be kept waiting, and Mr. Smith had kept them waiting for over half an hour. Who is this Smith character? Mumbled Bandai Namco around a mouthful of canapé. Lego finished building a plate of snacks. The flight had been hell and he was starving, before replying, "No idea. I only got the call 6 hours ago. Now I'm here, halfway around the world." "The same thing happened to me," Mattel put in, "though it seems my Learjet was more comfortable than traveling business class." She sipped her apple juice, leaving no trace of lipstick on the glass. Hasbro was furious. "They searched me, for crying out loud. Don't they know who I am?" He had watched as the security team ejected the clip on his sidearm of choice and fired the last dart into a pot plant in the foyer. At least they hadn't found the single-shot holdout pistol stuffed in his sock. Only Sony, dressed in a navy blue suit, stood apart from the gathering. He glowered at Bandai Namco. What is that upstart doing here? He wondered. The rest of the group were toy makers, nothing more, and he looked with some disdain at people who thought they were his equals. "This is ridiculous," growled the chairman of Bandai Namco. He made to leave, but at that very second, the double doors at the end of the boardroom opened. There, standing there was a small, young-looking man wearing a dark green suit, red shirt, and green tie. His blonde hair was cut short, and his ears were quite definitely pointed. Smith smiled politely. "Lady and gentlemen, I apologize for keeping you waiting. It's the devil's own business getting a sleigh parked around here." Smith waited for the laughs, but they didn't come. That was one of my best lines, he thought, somewhat disgruntled. It didn't matter. There were more to come. Please be seated, ladies and gentlemen. As you are all aware, he said as the assembled executives took their chairs, we are in the run-up to the most joyous time of the year. Children the world over are being as good as they can possibly be, writing their lists and posting them to the North Pole. Some even write several lists, I know, because my team double checks each one to try and sneak extra presents past their parents. These children, of course, end up on the naughty list. Again, no laughs from the assembled CEOs. Damn, they're a tough audience, Smith thought. Naughty or nice doesn't really matter at this time. We all know our good and bad points. What we're here to talk about, the elf went on, is delivery. Hogwash, blurted Namco Bandai. As we all know, it's the parents who do all the buying, wrapping, and delivery. Your boss is merely a frontman, a figurehead, has been for over 2,000 years. We rule Christmas. He looked around the table for support and saw nods from Hasbro, Mattel, and even Sony. Not for much longer. You see, Mr. Claus has decided to reassert his authority and legal rights on the issue. This, Smith produced a roll of parchment from thin air, is the original agreement. He unrolled the scroll and slid it down the conference table. As you can see, it was signed in Bethlehem by the three wise men, the original gift bringers, and Mr. Claus. He has inalienable rights to the delivery process. Sony, who had taken what he thought to be his rightful place at the head of the table, spoke up next. That document is out-of-date rubbish. Our legal teams will tear it to shreds, and Mr. Claus won't have a leg to stand on. Smith ignored the outburst. He had expected this from the company whose last original idea had been over 10 years ago. He continued smoothly, gazing at the placid, rather attractive face of the Mattel representative. She looked almost as perfect as one of their products. Delivery is rather a two-way process, don't you think? Goods are sent from one place and arrive at their destination. Of course, there are some delays between dispatch and receipt, but they are built into the process, have been for millennia. It doesn't take magic to move all that product, sneered Lego. It takes bloody hard work and a logistics chain that spans the world. We built ours brick by brick. One fat guy in a sleigh can't compete with our resources. Oh, but magic can compete, Smith replied. Compete and grind your logistics and supply chains into the slush. We've all seen this physics, Mr. Smith. When Mattel spoke, her voice was almost musical, as perfect as the voice recordings some products use. The speed required to deliver all in one night is impossible to achieve. The friction alone would be enough to turn the reindeer into Blitzenburgers. The other directors sniggered at that. Smith fumed inwardly. How could she raise a laugh when my best lines had failed miserably? He rallied well, however. You haven't seen all the physics, Miss Mattel. In fact, there exists a branch of physics even Professor Hawking would have difficulty understanding. Here we go, muttered Hasbro. That old fool's bluff and swagger will not get us to surrender our market dominance. Smith examined his fingernails for a moment. Have you ever noticed, he said to no one in particular, how when you glance at the clock, that first second seems to take longer than the rest? How that second seems to stretch before the rest of time runs to catch up? No? Thought not. They even have a word for it, chronostasis, sometimes referred to as the stopped clock illusion. He looked up at the assembled directors, who stared blankly back. This sounds like blackmail, said Mattel. Indeed, Smith concurred. At that, Hasbro stood, drew his jolt pistol, and fired at Smith. Unperturbed, Smith raised a hand. The dart stopped in midair. Smith glanced at the boardroom clocks as they clicked to 36 seconds. Imagine, if you can, how much could be accomplished in just 1 second. The boardroom clocks clicked to 37 seconds. As the clocks ticked to 38 seconds, every mobile phone in the room started ringing. Warehouses in 7 different time zones had been emptied in a split second. Delivery, as I said, is a two-way process. Goods are received at their destinations, but their sources are left empty. All in just 1 second. And there you go. A little Christmas story.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So Right, the cat has just jumped up, knocked everything down, and so anyway, Colin is our techie guy. So many thanks to him for getting the stream up and running. But also, how about another round of applause for Colin Brett, and just 1 second. And I believe that Colin plans to read the conclusion to Theo at the February meeting.
That should be right,
Yeah?
yes.
Yeah, that's great. All our feline and canine companions, eh?
Never work with children and animals.
Cathi, I muted you so that we didn't get the background noise when we started recording. So whenever you start reading, you'll need to unmute yourself. Is that all right? Or if you want to clap, yeah? Okay. So now this afternoon we have more new readers for you, plus one reader who has read once before. And so the next up is new reader Carol, who's returned to writing after quite a long break, and it is quite a long break. So please, a warm welcome to the mic for Carol Kerry-Green, who is reading an extract from her paranormal novel of Blood and Shadows.
Cheers. Thanks, Claire. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
No worries.
This is one chapter of the novel that takes place fairly early on, and it takes place after the estate where my main characters have been gathering has been attacked, and they've decided that they have to get out, and they're on their way to a safe house.
Right.
They took 2 large Hummers as they left Cornelius's estate behind them, Daston driving the first and Ignatius the second. Cornelius phoned Beatrice, who was in the second vehicle, had her put the phone on speaker so they could all hear what was being discussed. "How are our guests?" Cornelius asked. Confused, Theo answered, a smile in his voice. Not sure what they were expecting, but losing their weapons and being tied up wasn't it. The question, Cornelius answered, is how did they find us? I know Ciccone sent them as a scare tactic. He doesn't have all the details on us. The cars went quiet as everyone was thinking of the conundrum of how Ciccone had tracked them down. The estate was in the name of an alias with nothing to link it to Cornelius or his family. Okay, Ignatius's voice came over the open line. There's a clearing coming up. We need to pull over and check a couple of things before we get any close to New York. Cornelius agreed with his brother and had Dastan pull the Hummer to a halt in the turnout. They all got out. Theo even pulled the 4 aggressors out with him. Meanwhile, Dastan was rooting around in the back of one of the Hummers. Jerome, he called. Jerome joined him and saw that Dastan was pulling out what looked like one of the latest security ones used for checking for electronic bugs. He'd used something similar during his time in the army. Want me to check over our guests? Yes, do them first. I'll check out the cars, then we need to check everyone else. Everyone waited in silence as Jerome and Dastan ran their wands over the 4 captured men under the watchful eye of Theo. Nothing. Dastan ran them over the cars and even got down on his back on the ground to check underneath them. Jerome started checking everyone else. He checked Cornelius, Shay and Theo before motioning Roman over to him. Nothing on his front, but when Jerome ran it over his neck, a red light lit up on the wand and a slight beeping noise followed. Jerome touched his brother and motioned for him to stand still whilst he repeated the exercise. This had the same result. But, Roman began. It's okay, Rome, Jerome squeezed his shoulder. We'll get back to you in a minute. Here, stand with Shay. Roman moved over to stand next to the older man who put his arm around his shoulders as Jerome and Dastan quickly completed the exercise. Just Roman then, Dastan said as he joined Shay, Jerome and the young man in question. It's not in his clothes, Jerome said as he finished checking his brother over once more. It's in his neck, I think. Roman blanched and turned, vomiting into the bushes near him. Jerome could see that he was shaking as shock took hold of the younger man. Rome, hold on to me, Jerome said as he wrapped him up in his arms. He looked at Cornelius over his brother's shoulder. Ciccone chipped his own son. He fucking chipped his own son. Roman was shaking in Jerome's arms. I didn't know, his voice quivered. I didn't know. It's okay, Cornelius approached. We believe you. Jerome closed his eyes. Who would chip their own child like an animal? Dastan, is there a first aid kit in one of these monster cars? I'll get it. Shay spoke up for the first time and moved away to the back of one of the Hummers. I'm sorry, Ro, but we're going to have to remove it. You know that, right? His younger brother looked up at him, trusting Jerome to do what was right. His face was still a pale, sickly colour, and he was still shaking as he stood in the circle of Jerome's arms. Okay, Cornelius spoke up. Jerome, hold Dastan. Jerome, hold Roman so his head and neck aren't moving. I'm going to spray his neck with antiseptic gel, but there's no anaesthetic, so it will sting at the very least. Jerome nodded and held Roman in place. Cornelius took out a pair of gloves from the first aid kit and put them on, spraying the gel as he'd said he would. Afterwards, he removed a fresh scalpel from its packet and eyed up the young man's neck. With precision, he slit the skin and with a flick of his wrist, removed a tiny chip. Roman flinched but kept still in Jerome's arms, his eyes closed and his breathing heavy. Jerome watched as his great-grandfather quickly stemmed the bleeding and applied a butterfly bandage to the wound. Dastan came over with the wand again and checked Roman over one more time. This time no beeps or lights lit up. There had only been the one chip. Fuck, Jerome staggered a little as Roman passed out. Here, give him to me, Theo appeared at his side with Beatrice and took Roman out of his arms. They laid him gently in the back seat of their Hummer with Shay to watch over him. Cornelius and Dastan were examining the bug they had removed from Roman's neck. It was tiny, blinking red. On, off, on, off. That's it, Cornelius said. Though what I don't understand is why it took them so long to act on the information it was sending them. Roman has been with us for a few days now. Why wait until today to attack? Think about it, Neely, Ignatius said. Bea, Theo and I arrived today. Maybe he was trying to take as many of us out as he could. He may know we're Donati. He may know we have memory skills. But your ability to stop time is a closely guarded secret. Jerome considered what his uncle had said and had to agree with his assessment. It horrified him that anyone could treat their own son that way, and he was more horrified that it was his little brother who had been chipped like an animal. He could still feel himself getting angry the more he thought about it. He knew he had to control that. His family needed him, both the one he was remembering and the one he'd only just met. What are we going to do with it? Jerome asked. Jerome motioned to the bug in his great-grandfather's hand. We could crush it, but then he would know we'd found it. Give it to me, Theo said. When we get to New York, I'll plant it in a taxi. It will take Ciccone a while to figure out it's not his son driving around the city, and it will give us a chance to get to the safe house and get settled in before we decide what to do next. No one could think of anything that beat what Theo suggested, so they all piled back into the cars. Jerome made sure he got into the one with Roman and hugged the young man tight. You okay? He asked. I think so, just the shock. How could he do that, Jerome? I mean, I've heard of parents having an app on the kids' phones so they could track them, but to put a chip inside me? I know. He was quiet for a moment. When we get settled in the safe house, I'm going to ask Bea to work with me on the memories she blocked when I was 17. Maybe there'll be a clue there. He shivered. He didn't want to remember, but knew he had to. He had to keep his family safe. He felt a small hand squeeze his and smiled at Beatrice, who was sitting in front of him. When they arrived on the outskirts of the city, they dropped Theo off and watched him get into a yellow cab. Then they drove off to the agreed meet-up point. The four attackers sat in the back of the Hummer, and Jerome could feel the confusion rolling off them. Their day had not gone as planned. He hoped there would be no more surprises today. Thank you.
Sorry, I always forget to unmute myself. Right, that's brilliant. Yeah. Very interesting sort of setup there, Carol. So I'll have to have a look at this one.
Yeah.
A few minutes to investigate it. Right. So so that's Kerry-Green's debut novel, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know you've written lots of other stuff as well.
Yeah, it's the first one that will be self-published, and it's the first in the trilogy called the Donati Chronicles.
Right.
So this one is with Blood and Shadows, and it should be out in April.
Right. Okay, sounds great. Fabulous. So let's just give a bit of extra appreciation then to Carol.
Thank you.
Okay. So our next reader is Chrome Oxide, and he's our first international reader. So we've got a lot of firsts today. May there be many more, I say. And he writes comedy and SF and fantasy. So let's hear it for Chrome Oxide with Vampire Free Zone, which is a short fiction piece from his collection, 28 Minutes into the Future.
Vampire Free Zone. Opening my coffin shakes the dust off my daily rest. It's the only possession I have with any meaning left, crafted in an ornate style from a few hundred years ago. I repose daily in the pitch dark of a storage unit under a freeway overpass. The locks provide a major improvement over the insecure mausoleums of the old country. Stepping outside under the starry sky, a warm breeze carries the scent of recent visitors to this facility. Because I fed last night, I'm able to resist the call of blood. However, I can't wait too long. Short summer nights provide me with barely enough time to hunt my fill of free-range humans. The aroma of multiple blood types lures me towards a part of Skid Row I've never visited before. I'm new to Los Angeles and need to search out fresh hunting grounds. Walking along, the stench of waste assaults my enhanced sense of smell. Metal bars scar the doors and windows of businesses that aren't boarded up. A couple of signs catch my attention. They're in the window of Big Red's 24-hour blood bank and drug emporium, and they cause me to stop and laugh. Two signs, one dusty and faded. The first one says Vampire Free Zone. It seems overwhelmed by the fresher day-glow colors of the second one proclaiming Gun Free Zone. My hunger is still temporarily sated from a feeding the night before, so I have time to investigate these amusing signs. Since my transformation, in addition to blood, I've developed a craving for humor. I walk slowly into Red's to determine if the anti-vampire sign warns of a real threat is more of the typical human wishful thinking. A receptionist with a lovely neck says, "Hi, I'm Sunshine. Are you here to donate or score?" Neither. I suffer from a rare form of anemia. I'm unable to donate blood or enjoy drugs. I stopped in to ask about the signs in the window. She replies, "You're not the first to ask. Red told me he hung the vampire sign when he started the blood bank 6 years ago. I thought because his sign worked to keep away vampires, I put up a sign to keep away guns. If it were that easy, I should wear a Vampire Hunter Free Zone t-shirt. Although the idea of wearing a Vampire Free Zone t-shirt while feeding seems appropriate for this day and age. Just because I've lost my life doesn't mean I've lost my sense of humor. I liked Sunshine, so I gave her a brief, close-lipped smile to hide my fangs. Her logic and understanding of how the world works is both scary and funny at the same time. Do you have many customers? Yes, we do. Because of a loophole in the law, we're the only licensed drug emporium in the city. Our night customers are interested in scoring. Red told me that our day customers are interested in donating blood. I wish that order were reversed. My search for blood donors is limited to the dark of night. The drug sales price list on the wall behind Sunshine would cause me to gasp if I still breathed. The prices are low, but like gasoline, the taxes are outrageously high. The only small price on the chart is what Reds pays for blood. In this neighborhood, no one can afford a single dose of any of their drugs, even if they donate their full 10 pints of blood. There isn't a sales price for blood, so I wonder who they sell it to. Since they don't sell blood to walk-in customers, it's possible they don't protect it with the same security they employ for the drugs. If so, I need to drop by again and try to arrange for takeout. In other cities, when I dined on food delivery personnel, I quickly ended up in a no delivery zone with a stronger police presence. I ask, "How long have you worked here?" "I started working 2 weeks ago because Inez, the prior receptionist, refused to return to work after being shot." I eyeball the countertop. Even after cleaning, my senses pick up the residual residue of multiple blood types. This suggests a high turnover in receptionists. "I don't see a security guard here. Does your necklace with its 5 and 6 pointed stars, the Ankh and other symbols and medallions provide you with the courage to work here?" "No, my necklace honors the goddess in all her many forms, female or male, human or non-human. I put up the gun-free zone sign to protect me from guns. I don't understand why it isn't working. The week before I put up the sign, there weren't any robberies. In the 5 days since I put up the sign, we've been robbed twice." "I wish you luck with your new sign." She smiles at me and says, I'm hoping that the longer the sign is up, the more effective it becomes. I managed to keep the humor from my face and voice. Do you think the sign might be ineffective because the robbers are illiterate or English isn't their native tongue? Her smile grows bigger and she says, thanks, I never thought of that. When my break begins, I'll start making more signs in other languages. Signs don't stop gun-carrying criminals for the same reason that laws don't stop bribe-accepting politicians. Criminals and politicians need stronger measures to deter them from the chosen course of action. With a grin on my face, I return to the sidewalk and continue my evening hunt. In the distance, I spy a 6-foot-tall man wearing an army surplus jacket, t-shirt, jeans, and combat boots on risers. A meal on heels. Even from a block away, he reeks of poor hygiene and gunpowder. As we approach each other, I hear an irregularity in his pulse and smell impurities in his blood. The memory of the sign in the window and the scent of the gunpowder inspired me to change my approach to this unhappy meal. I move to prevent him from walking past me and stare into his eyes. Brother, can you spare a pint? Because drug-scrambled brains are less susceptible to my hypnotic powers, I'm not surprised when he draws his gun. His hand shakes and his voice quivers. Get the fuck out of my way. I need a fix bad and you're jacking me up. Since Jedi mind tricks don't work, I grab both his arms and squeeze. He starts to moan. Still staring into his eyes, I say, you shouldn't go in there. Reds is now a gun-free zone. Let me go, man. What I do ain't none of your concern. I'll have you busted for assault. I know my rights. I laugh and lift him off the ground while continuing to stare into his eyes. You must have mistaken me for a law-abiding citizen. I'm neither law-abiding nor a citizen. However, I've decided to enforce Red's gun-free zone. Do you have any objections? He stutters, no, and then pisses himself. I guess he doesn't like my 5'6", 120-pound body lifting his 6 foot, 250-pound body over my head. After I put him down, instead of running away, he shoots me in the chest. While not fatal, I will need to feed again soon to repair the damage. Before he can fire a second round into me, I slam one fist into his mouth, preventing him from crying out. With my other hand, I grab him, pull him under my arm, and run into a nearby alley. It stinks like a filthy bathroom, although no one is using it for that or any other purpose at this moment. This means that no one will observe my late night snacking. The bullet in my chest will teach me not to play with my food. It annoys me whenever my shirts are damaged with bullet holes and gunpowder residue. I grin at him and say, as an undocumented visitor to this country, I'm about to exercise my right to a government-subsidized meal. The taste of his blood startles me, so I say, how can you live like this? It's a good thing I'm dead or I'd need a visit to a free clinic and drug rehab after drinking your blood. When he's empty, I place his corpse in a recycle bin for biodegradables. It's too bad there isn't a California redemption value for empty blood bags because of how many I've drained over the years. Maybe like restaurants that offer free refills, I need an organization for refilling blood bags. Isn't that environmentally better than discarding the empties? On the other hand, because the government gives carbon credits to polluters, they should give blood credits to drinkers. I think about sunshine in the signs in the window. Somehow the public became convinced that victims with guns don't prevent involuntary handouts to criminals. Could the public be made to believe that crosses don't prevent involuntary blood donations to vampires? To get crosses banned, all I need to do is convince some politicians that crosses exist only to offend members of other religions. I could even be magnanimous and allow police to carry crosses. With typical response times of minutes, I'd be able to finish my meal before the 911 operators could finish answering the calls. I walk back to Reds and ask Sunshine, do you have any work for the night shift? I'm new in town and can use the money. Well, we need another guard. Our last night shift guard was fired when he tried robbing Reds with a gun. We're having difficulty hiring guards with our no guns policy. That isn't a problem for me. I don't need a gun to defend myself. I grin at her. Great, here's an application. I look forward to working with you. She breathes deeply, her chest expanding in a way that a living man would appreciate. Her pulse rate climbs, causing the veins in her neck to throb in a way that I appreciate. This new job will provide me with money to start my campaign and an opportunity to see how much sunshine I can take without putting myself in danger. The end.
That was very funny. Right, so please make some noise for Chrome, Oxide and Vampire Free Zone from the 28 Minutes into the Future collection. That's fab, Stephen. What I really like about that is the fact you really got inside that guy's head and you were really inside his point of view. So really well done.
Thank you.
Right, okay. And now we're going to welcome a returning reader, and with an urban fairy tale set in an unfashionable suburb, please welcome back to the mic Cathi Rae and a story from her On The Nightbus collection. Cathi, would you like to tell us what the title is? Because I don't...
It doesn't have a title. It's chapter 5.
Chapter 5, that's fine. Chapter 5, fabulous.
So this is a collection of interlinked short stories all set on or around night buses in big cities. Okay, so the problem really is that Dell is a romantic, a hopeless romantic. Dell has the heart and soul of a fearless knight. He is, within the limitations of the 21st century, chivalry personified. And he dreams of love, true, enduring love, love that will lift him up where he belongs. And this story starts on a wet Monday night, the sort of night where you bend your body into your clothes, hunch down to keep out the cold and the dark and the rain. And Dell is driving the Crouch End late night circular, and it's midnight and the rain is keeping people off the streets, so it's quiet. And then he sees her, the love of his life, the woman he is going to marry, and he nearly plows the bus into the back of a badly illuminated skip, but manages to slam the brakes on just in time, and ignoring the cursing and muttering of few passengers, he sits and he stares while she stands on the pavement. Dell has never really understood the words breathtaking before, but now, looking at this woman, he is struggling to breathe. He is almost panting. She is beyond beautiful. Tall, of course. Slim, of course. Long blonde hair, well, of course. But this is about far more than physical beauty. This is about connection. This is about fate. And when she looks up, looks directly at him, he feels an actual jolt of energy. And then the car, black, some souped up piece of shit comes screeching round the corners, brakes slam hard and a voice shouts, "Get in the effing car, we're going to be effing late." And she does, just like that. The boom beat box and the overdub bass kicks in so loudly that Dell can feel it in his fillings. And so he is holding his jaw as the car and the thump-thump bass and the love of his life drive up the road, kangaroo over a speed bump and vanish, just like that. And he cannot stop thinking about her. And later in sweaty, confused and tangled dreams, he is rescuing her again and again and again. And when he wakes up, her face is the first thing he thinks of. That night, and it's unheard of, he arrives early for work, spruced up, ready to go in search of his one true love. He is sure she will be there, cannot even consider that she is far away, locked up in some tower block, and so, when at midnight, well, it has to be midnight, this is a fairy story after all, he sees her standing at the same place, he's not surprised. He can recognize the hand of fate. She is even more beautiful than he remembers, but this time she's not alone. Did I mention this story has an ogre? An urban ogre, all sweat and swagger and expensive ogre jeans pulled down to show off its hairy ogre's ass, and an ogre baseball cap to cover up his greasy ogre hair. The ogre, the driver of the souped up ogre car, is standing beside the princess, and he's jabbing the air with his grubby ogre fingers, and each time he jabs, she shrinks back into herself. Dell lets the engine idle, pats the steering wheel, watches the ogre, watches the princess, and knows that he must act, but he doesn't know what to do. Doesn't have a plan, and so sighing, almost sobbing, he puts the bus back into gear and heads off into the night. And so it goes on and on, again and again. Our gentle knight sees the princess, understands the cruelty of the ogre, watches her diminish under the barrage of ogre attacks. Sometimes she seems to see Dell, looks straight at him. He feels the appeal in her eyes, knows that time is running out, that soon the ogre will take her away forever, lock her up, chain her with cruel words and poverty in the limits of 4 grubby walls. This fairy story is coming to a climax. The happy ending seems far away and all hope is lost, but come the hour, come the hero. Dell dreams again, and his dream presents the solution, and when he wakes, he knows exactly what he must do. He understands his action will change his life forever. He will be a knight both bold and true, and he will tonight finally rescue the princess from the evil ogre. He gets to work, and while he makes chat with the other drivers, his heart is pounding with love and the rightness of his actions. Into the cab, stroke the wheel, feel the power and drive away. He needs to get his timing right, and because this is a fairy story, he does. At 11:30, the end of one Crouch End loop, passengers disgorge. With a shaking hand, he presses the button, changes the destination to display to read sorry, I'm not in service, and drives towards his princess and her salvation. And of course, there she is with the ogre, on the ogre pavement next to the stinking ogre takeaway beside the overheated ogre car, and the ogre is angry. The ogre voice is raining over ogre spike onto her beautiful head, and Dell sits up, breathes deeply, and hits the horn. Blah! The princess looks up. The ogre looks up, red piggy ogre eyes darting into the dark. Dell stops the bus beside her, hits the door override button, and shouts, "Get in, I've come to rescue you." And because this is a fairy story, she doesn't look blank or ask stupid questions or tell him to F off and mind his own business. She leaps forward, and with one bound, she is on the bus. And Dell tries to close the door, but the ogre is there. Scabby ogre, hands scrabbling with the handle, and Dell is driving as fast as he can, slamming his hand onto the door closed button, and the ogre is hanging on by an ogre nail, and the bus is going faster and faster, and finally, the ogre's stumpy, hairy ogre legs cannot go on for another minute, and he falls into the gutter, and his guttural screams of ogre anger can be heard as the bus moves away. And because it's a fairy story, the princess and the brave knight look at each other and fall in love immediately and forever. And Dell drives the bus through the back streets of unfashionable corners of suburban London, and they hold hands and they smile. And because this is a fairy story, you're not allowed to ask what happened next. Did Dell lose his job? Did the princess turn out to have a crack cocaine problem? Did the ogre promise to change and lure her back into their tower block prison? Because what happened next was they lived happily ever after. Well, what else did you expect? Thank you.
Okay, so a big hand then for Cathi Rae and the On The Nightbus collection.
Thank you.
Fantastic, that was great. I really enjoyed that too. Yeah, really good. So back to the new readers now, and the next reader is Mike. So let's join Mike Linnett for some more science fiction, fantasy, comedy on the planet of free cider and cinnamon buns.
Well, follow that. That was something. Okay, so first chapter, Wake Up Call. Wotan, Norse god, ruler of Valhalla, president of the Valkyries, languished at home in Asgard, one of the 9 worlds, pondering over the nature of existence, when the orange light on his desk phone flashed. He picked up the handset and gazed absently at the signed Beyonce poster on his wall. It was a call from his wife, Brig. "Another hippie on the line," she said. "Had a few too many drugs, I suspect. Thought he was calling for a takeaway." "Put him through," sighed Wotan. "Yes, Wotan here. What is it?" There was a pause on the line, then a whispered conversation. "It's bloody Wotan. He isn't very happy. If I ask him for 3 vegetable balties and 6 poppadoms, what do I say? Tell him you got the wrong number. Are you an idiot? Do you think he won't be able to trace the call? Well, ask him about the nature of reality then." "Hello there. Me and my friends were wondering about the nature of reality." Said Wotan. "Out of interest, how did you get this number?" "Well, we're at a music festival and this little guy sold us some special cakes. My idiot son Varley, no doubt. His idea of a joke." "Well, okay then, let me explain this in a way you might understand. You see, gods create universe from a spark of existence. They separate matter from antimatter, light from dark, good from evil. A bit like setting off a box of fireworks inside a pop-up tent, if you get my drift. Apparently the universe is a pop-up tent. Well, let's hope it's made of stronger stuff than ours," giggled his friends. "It's made from space-time fabric," boomed Wotan. "So our universe is just a big festival tent then?" asked the hippie, sounding a bit disappointed. "Well, yes, if you like," replied Wotan. "So what about reality then?" asked the hippie. "Reality is like a big version of Glastonbury, an infinite field of tents with a different god on each stage. So everyone ends up in the same place then?" "Well, pretty much," said Wotan. "Only you'll be wearing different T-shirts, or you may spend eternity at the very back, wondering what it is all about, and just go back to your tent." "Well, what about reincarnation?" asked the hippie, his voice squeaking. "Well," said Wotan, "some of the gods send you back to your tent, say in case you didn't bring enough money for the T-shirts, or forgot to bring your mobile phone to wave over your head for the encore. that kind of thing. Ask him about black holes, someone whispered. Well, now and again, the tent fabric wears a bit thin, said Wotan testily. So who's on the pyramid stage then? Who's the headline act? Asked the hippie. There was an awkward silence. Oh, well, thanks very much, Wotan. You've cleared up nicely. The line went dead, and Wotan shook his head and replaced the handset. If only the hippie had stayed online, he'd have explained that our universe happens to be quite some distance from the pyramid stage. The one beside it, glowing a kind of tango orange, was created on a Sunday by the Norse god. Wotan realised that in Glastonbury terms, he was pretty much a guest appearance on the Lifetime Achievement stage. His main following in our universe had been the Vikings, but they'd mostly given up raping and pillaging in favour of making flat pack furniture, safe but ultimately boring cars, and gloomy TV series. The metaphorical crowd around his stage had mostly drifted off for light refreshments, and he was left with a ragtag bunch of misfits. Basically, he decided it was time for a new album, and that required a new universe. This meant a trip to the interplanetary auction. Even better, he could bid remotely via his online portal. He just needed to remember his username and password. Chapter 2, Interplanetary Auction. Mr. Abel Lakshmi, the auctioneer, was typically dressed for a man in his profession, like a High Court judge without his wig. He had standard issue pince-nez, which he appeared over in a schoolmasterly fashion. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, gods, he began, addressing the vast auditorium. I see Wotan at the back. Forgot your login credentials again, did you, sir? Once again, I welcome you all to the Interplanetary Auction, the finest, the grandest, the only place in this or any universe to come for all your planetary needs. We have a fine selection of planets for you today. If you're here for the constellation stage, that's on a Tuesday. Don't forget that Thursday is Crab Nebula Day. We've got all your heating and lighting requirements covered on Sunday, literally Sundays. He made that joke every time to groans from the regulars. At the end of the month, we have a very special sale, which we call the Phenomenal Sale. We host black holes, red giants, white dwarfs, and pulsars. You all know the rules. Bids are final, and payment has to be made before collection. Returns only for legitimate reasons. Check the small print on the catalogue, and absolutely no returns without your receipt, so hold on to it. On the surface, he exuded calm and responsibility, but inside he was feeling uneasy. Planets were his stock and trade, his business. He knew how to assess them, measure them, value them, and check them. The Lakshmi Guide to Planet Grading was the Bible, and he was Mr. Lakshmi. However, business had been so busy over the last few months that corners had been cut. When Mr. Lakshmi wasn't available, people waited until he was, but the powers that be had decided to bring in contractors to do some of the inspections. Inevitably, that led to a few mistakes. Lot 62, the planet Xanthus, for example. On the face of it, a fine starter planet for the keen skier. A good mountain range with plenty of snow, but had been left unoccupied for several millennia since the last owner had been caught in an avalanche and the dwarves had moved in and exerted squatters' rights. Now we couldn't get near the ski lift for the little buggers, and they'd lowered the chairs so it weren't any good for anybody but dwarves. It should have been checked over, but the contractor had done a half-assed job. A quick drone flyover and a photo shoot. Everyone knew that dwarves didn't show up on overhead shots with their white ski outfits and grey beards. Caspar Wiggins, the glue magnet, had bought it for his wife, and he'd been on the phone the next day ranting and raving. He'd had to loan him the spare and fit an artificial slope to tide him over. Worse still was the planet Crichton, Lot 63. Zeus himself had put this one on via the online portal, using his platinum access card. There was no getting away from it. Crichton was a crap planet. It was the Austin Allegro of planets. Zeus had made it on a Friday afternoon just before knocking off time. There weren't any decent minerals left, so he'd stuffed it with landfill, so he couldn't put it anywhere near a star or it'd explode due to waste gas buildup. If Zeus thought that this was giving it an interesting name was going to work, then he had another thing coming, thought Lakshmi.
Mike, I'll stop you for a minute.
Yes.
Sorry. Is Can you hear a buzzing? So we've got a real buzz.
No.
Can you not?
No.
No.
There's something. 2
Phone
seconds.
Oxide and I can hear it.
2 seconds.
Okay. Sorry, we want to hear you properly. No.
Is that? I've turned the central heating off. Is that any better?
No.
No?
I don't think so. Don't know what it is. Woo.
How's that?
It's receding a little bit, but it's like somebody's put a drill or something on.
No, there's nothing. Nothing here.
No, that's weird.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, is that still buzzing?
it is, but it's gone into the background now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know.
That's weird, isn't it? Anyway, yeah, we can hear better now.
2 seconds. So
Okay. Sorry about that.
that's all right.
I just thought it would be better to hear you rather than not.
Okay. Right, said Lashmere, we're up and running. Lot number 2. What do we have? Planet Crawl. Small but perfectly formed, 5,000 miles in circumference. It contains gold and diamond mines. This one was owned by Silesian royalty, right up to until they were deposed and hanged. Need I say any more? Daytruckers will love this one. No expense has been spared. There's a lava-driven hot tub, a rocket launch pad, and an archipelago, complete with an automatic ferry with its own timetable. Lakshmi glanced around the audience, scanning for the ermine-clad brigade with their false eyelashes and handbag dogs. Things continued on smoothly for the next 3 hours. Whittle got his iron planet, a steel $500 billion. The grubby, polluted former coal mining world depleted of coal, no atmosphere, uninhabitable. Then came Lot 62. Ladies and gentlemen, time for a short intermission. The waiter will be along shortly with more cinnamon buns and fizzy drinks. After a short interval of chewing and noisy slurping, Lakshmi said, "Here we go again, ladies and gentlemen. Lot number 62, the planet Xanthus, Holy of the Gods. You won't see anything like this again." An old man with a toothless grin caught his eye. "Dimensions, you ask? Well, I can't give you them." There was a puzzled murmur from the crowd. Then Lakshmi added, "Xanthus is the shape of DNA." There were a few blank looks, so he added, "Same shape as Fuzili." This was meant to be the ultimate in planet creation and recreation, a planet that could unzip and replicate itself, designed to create planets from asteroid belts. It was a great success. Thousands and thousands of DNA-shaped planets were made. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the very last one, a rare and desirable object. This is one for the connoisseur, the collector. Where are all the rest of them? Shouted the skeptical youth in a denim jacket. Lakshmi nodded at his floorman, but the question hung in the air. "Well," said Lakshmi, more to himself, "who'd want to live on a very Fuzili-shaped planet?" It turned out, although these planets were great for skiing, they weren't much good for anything else. You couldn't travel around them as they were too steep, and there was a risk of falling off the end. Also, and this might put 1 or 2 people off, you had to share it with the dwarves. There was a collective drone, as everyone knew that dwarves made terrible neighbours. "I had some," said one of the ladies. "They were forever arguing, and when they weren't arguing, they were tunnelling under your house to see if there were any valuables hidden there. Also, they didn't need to see many sleep. 1 minute, there's a party, then an argument, then some tunnelling, then another party. It's a bloody nightmare." "So what did you do?" asked her friend. "Well, we left them to it," she said. "Just bought another planet and made sure it was out of earshot. Noisy little buggers they were." "So what am I bid?" asked Lashmere. There was a silence from the audience. No one bid. More trouble than it's worth. Trying to get an eviction order on a planet of dwarfs, it takes years, and even if you get one, they wouldn't go. You need to send in the dwarf excluders. Expensive business all round. "Not sold," said Lashmere. "Right, let's move on to Lot 63, the planet Crichton. Let me see. Dimensions 4,000 miles, nice and flat. Mineral wealth 0. Every planet has some minerals, someone said. Also, continued Lashmere, you can't have this one too near the sun, or it might explode. There was a collective groan from the auditorium. Any bids? Any offers? No. Well, we'll have to mark that down as unsold as well. The portal team had moved well away from their monitors as blue flashes of lightning jumped out towards them from an enraged Zeus. May I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for a most enjoyable afternoon. I hope to see you again soon. Mr. Lakshmir took one final sip of tepid water and unclipped his microphone. He turned to leave the pulpit and caught the eye of Wartime. Very surprised to hear you, my lord. Together you weren't able to locate your credentials or note of bidding. Wartime nodded. We seem to have been left with two of the most undesirable planets. The management will not be pleased. As you know, storage costs are astronomical, if you pardon the pun. Crichton requires a refrigeration unit. Quite so, said Wartime. Is there anything we can do for you? Well, said Wartime, this might suit my purpose. I'll pick them up next Wartime's Day. Wartime's Day, of course, said Lashmere. Very good, my lord. We'll have the atmosphere cleaned and the lawns hedges clipped for you. So it came to pass on the next Wartime's Day, Wartime collected his planets and created his universe in time-honoured fashion. Or more accurately, he fashioned time. It wasn't exactly like setting off fireworks in a pop-up tent. It was more like opening a can of beer with one of those gas canisters inside. Once you started, there was no going back. You found an old pre-universe lying about the place. So it was just a case of tugging the ring pull. In truth, it was a fairly half-hearted attempt at a universe. With a second-hand sun he picked up from a backstreet dealer, orbited by a couple of planets, one of which was some considerable distance away from the sun for safety reasons, so therefore quite chilly. He was about to see what else he could find. Then he remembered the season finale of Wallander was about to start on satellite TV. He added a population to Xanthus, made up of warriors and Valkyries, who'd been promised eternal paradise. Then he called it a day, hoping they weren't going to be too disappointed. This ought to do it, he thought, an idyllic paradise. They'll be at each other's throats in no time. The end result wasn't a great universe by any standard. Put it this way, the astronomy club on Xanthus wasn't going to have many members. All in all, it was a bit like the free version of a smartphone app. It promised much, but was missing quite a lot of the interesting stuff. However, some of the gods weren't as keen on Wallander as Wotan. They saw this universe as an opportunity to get rid of some of their extraneous junk, much in the same way as you might be tempted to dispose of an old mattress when your neighbour leaves the skip half filled outside his house. Zeus threw in a host of desperate criminals. They wouldn't be able to do much more than throw sticks at each other. So the population was murderers, swindlers, drug smugglers, forgers, gold miners, embezzlers, scam artists, heads of state, and some of the most notorious organized criminal gangs. It also had more of its fair share of Peruvian pipe bands, but largely vanished from the rest of the universe. Collectively, crime had fallen by 76% in 700 planets across 15 universes. Conversely, average takings for the remaining Peruvian pipe bands had risen by 76% due to their scarcity. He decided not to fashion Crichton like a giant prison camp, no armed guards and watchtowers, no searchlights. He decided it was a sterile planet with no useful minerals. Apollo threw in some loose asteroids he'd been carrying around in his pocket. How am I doing for time? I kind of lost track of it there.
I think I think we probably ought to finish there. Were you at the end of that chapter? All right, okay. Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you. So let's hear it again for Mike Linnett and the planet of free cider and cinnamon buns. Fabulous. Right, well. Okay. So now I'm going to put this session to bed with a reading from the Zarduth Imperative Clanship, which is one of the two books that I'm currently working on. And this is from chapter 5, where the Earth ships have followed the Zarduthi children on board the Bekel to the Declany system. Okay. Omol Fadaifa cast a surreptitious glance at the main sim tank from his comms console. It had also picked up the white speck which represented the Kameen which had left hyperspace almost 500ths ago after it had travelled from Havirtal. Ever since then, he'd surreptitiously tracked it with a mixture of eagerness for action at last and dread at the thought of the clan being split up. That's odd, he thought, noticing another speck, this time the yellow of an unidentified craft, at the edge of the system. Then he spotted two more, following in a familiar triangular formation. Aftar? I know, I've seen them, but I doubt they're ours. Whose then? The humans? That seems likely. They're not Voth. Aftar centred in on the four ships at a 40% upscale. All were black with white identification markings. The Kameen was approaching their position, its single slanting pictogram in Zarduthi script visible near either end of the mirror-hulled craft. Check trajectory and ETA of unknown hyperdrive-style ships at edge of Declaney system, he instructed the computer. Trajectory, bound for Declane. ETA in 300ths. Aftar turned his attention to the three following ships. They bore unfamiliar, squared-off markings which, at this distance, were indistinguishable, even allowing for the alien script. But the formation was quickly closing in on the Kameen. There was a burst of speech on Omol's comms console. Its miniature sim tank showed a female of similar proportions to Ayar Dakut's human companions, though taller and more powerfully built than most of them, and apparently wearing a uniform. His translator unit recognized the language in a few thousandths. The sim tank's unit remained obstinately silent with no input from Ayar's human friends. Raquel, this is JSEP ship Challenger 2. Please respond. They can't read our script, Omol said. They think the Kameen is the Bekel. As long as she stays where she is, the Bekel is safely hidden behind Zeret, Aftar pointed out, and so are we. But the Kameen's target practice out in the open like that. So are they, if the Voth spot them. Initiate contact with the Kameen, Omol. The gap between the Kameen and the foremost human ship narrowed further. Respond immediately, Bekel, or prepare to be boarded. Grigory Deshenevsky, we're just switching to another location now, back on Earth. Grigory Deshenevsky followed the prison guards into the visiting area where Per Lakshar awaited him. I should explain, Per Lakshar is the leader of a terrorist group called the New Luddites. One of the guards ushered him to a seat opposite Per, visible through the perspex barrier. 5 minutes, he said, holding up his hand with outspread fingers. Grigory nodded at the guard. Per had already lifted the telephone to talk to him. Grigory had disguised himself to look like the American businessman who owned Moscow FC this time. He lifted the telephone on his side and heard Per say, "What are you doing here, Mr. Ginsberg?" His neat pencil moustache twitched. "I thought I'd pay you a visit." Per couldn't read his expression beneath the dark glasses. "You've taken your time." "I didn't have anything to say before." Grigory sighed and relaxed back into his chair. "I have now." "I see. Well, the equipment is contaminated," Per warned him. "Keep it clean at all costs." "Fair enough." Grigory and Per had long ago developed a code for use in such situations. He slipped naturally into it now. "Well, the bad news is we miss your valuable input at meetings. I want to organise a rescue package for the club." "Don't even consider it," Per said. "Have you any idea how that would incapacitate me? The player would have to go through rehab before they'd be of any use to you." For that, Grigory thought, read, "I want to get out of here on good behaviour." I hadn't thought of it like that. The player should be with us, not undergoing treatment. The player willingly went for treatment so that you could carry on the fight, Grigory. Surely you're not going to squander his sacrifice. Now that I've heard your opinion, perhaps I should revise my plans. Lucky I've prepared an alternative, he thought. Per can be a bit single-minded about some things. We still need more input. How's about I introduce more players? An interim solution? If you like. Good, do it. Well, the player's not changing his behaviour or location. It's not long now till the transfer window opens. Grigori's jaw dropped open, but he saw the prison guard approaching, so he nodded and said, "Okay, I understand. Your 5 minutes are up," the prison guard said. And now we're going back to the Cameen. Olga Varishka, we're actually on the Earthship, about to go to the Cameen. Olga Varishkova listened intently to her headset, listening to her orders. As they finished, she turned to Chaz and the rest of her squad. "That's it," she said. "We move." Chaz exchanged a glance with her. They ignored the message, he guessed. Correct. Olga beckoned all of them on down the corridor. They marched in sharp time. Turn left, straight on for 200 metres. Turn left again. The airlock hatch was before them. It slid open at Olga's touch on the button. Helmets, she reminded them. Chaz helped her fasten hers with fingers greasy with sweat. Then she helped him, fumbling rather less. He couldn't help remembering the other time he'd been on board the Bakel. He was sure, although her face was expressionless, that Olga remembered it too. He wondered what they'd find this time as he stood up in the bulky spacesuit, stun weapon at the ready, stomach churning. Since they were only two, teeth won't work at all. They were the only two members of the original squad left. Since that fateful day when they boarded the Zarduth ship, Chaz had never once glimpsed any emotion on her features, but they'd talked more often and worked as partners now. They crowded inside the airlock. Chaz, Olga, Luigi Morello, Bjorn Einarsson, Kenneth Jehoda, and Esther Jerome. The hatch closed behind them. Ahead was only the blank face of the outer hatch. The dial showed the air pressure in the airlock dropping. Chaz watched it count down. 25,000 psi, 20,000, 15,000. It reached 0. The hatch slid open. The mirror-hulled Zarduth ship lay just meters away from the Challenger 2, reflecting the local pattern of stars. Chaz pulled the cord for the boosters on his back, felt the force of the shove the miniature rockets gave him towards the Bakel. Below lay the dizzying void of space. He looked up at the Zarduth ship above him, sure that the first person he'd meet on board it would be his foster son, and that he'd be expected to shoot him down. He remembered that Olga had asked to keep him in her unit precisely because of his knowledge of the Zarduthi, as gained from his foster son. It had rankled, but he could see the sense of it. At least we're using stun bolts, he reminded himself, but he hardly felt any better about that. As they approached, the airlock grew through the vision plate of his helmet. As it did, he noticed something different about it that he couldn't place at first. Then he almost shouted for joy. The airlock's in the right place, but its design is alien. Eddie rebuilt the one the Voth damaged to a human design as the Zarduthi specs weren't available. This can't possibly be the Bakel, but if that's the case, then what ship is it? And what will happen if we board it? Olga, he called urgently. Thank you very much. Don't forget to unmute yourself. Thank you so much. Brilliant. Okay, so I know some of you have put your links and everything in the chat. Mike, you've put yours in, haven't you?
I'll put a little bit more. I'll put the website in as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, is he gone?
Oh.
Right. Oh, well, he's gone to put that in. That's fine. So yeah. So I will post these on my timeline and in the Finger on the Pulse and on my YouTube channel, Helen Claire Gould as well. And so before we go, I'd just like to wish all our lovely listeners a happy new year and hope that 2021 will be an improvement on 2020. So this has been Helen Claire Gould comparing Fiction Fix Online And many thanks for joining us. And the next Fiction Fix Online is on Sunday, the 7th of February at 4 p.m. till just after 5 p.m. I look forward to catching up with you then. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm just
Thanks, Claire.
Yeah, it's Helen.
Yeah, Helen Claire.
yeah, it's fine. I'm just Helen.
Sorry, my editor's called
it
Claire.
confuses the end. No, people know end, so don't worry about it. Right, let me find the recording. Where's that gone?
Right, lovely. I must love you and leave you.
Yes.
I will catch up with you all soon. Thank you for the opportunity.